This is a disruptive innovation, period. And we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I think we're going to get to a place truly that we're going to have to probably tax AI agents and robots like people. It's going to be very interesting. I'm never afraid because it's going to happen anyway.
You were quite ahead of your time. You added intelligence to internet when it wasn't even a thing.
When I look at truly disruptive moments, they become tangible moments. The internet was sort of around for 50 years, but its tangible moment happened when this PC hit your desktop and you could take it home. But here's the difference between the internet and AI. Back then, we had time to catch up. Right now, this is running at the speed of light.
What do most people get wrong about GenAI today?
A lot. I think a lot of people do one of two things. They underestimate or they overestimate it.
You're also like at the intersection of security and AI. So what's the hype of GenAI around cybersecurity right now?
I feel like the attack vectors are increasing. Deep fakes, plagiarism, the ability to create phishing attacks just got 20 times better. From my perspective, cybersecurity is going to take a bigger and bigger stage in all of this.
Let's say there's a 20-year-old out there looking to break into tech and is now getting aware of GenAI. Where would that person get started?
What I see right now is
before ChatGPT, before Alexa, before AI was mainstream, Kristy Davis was already out there embedding intelligence into digital platforms. In 1997, she landed on the cover of Computer World magazine for launching one of the first AI-enabled consumer-facing web platforms. She created a tool that diagnosed car problems using artificial intelligence, tied it to e-commerce, and turned it into a digital pipeline for Allied Signal. Fast forward to her recent past, she was the VP of Active Intelligence, Innovation, and AI at the Channel Company, where she led the enterprise shift toward agentic AI. This is an episode from the series How to Stay Relevant, and I'm thrilled to welcome Kristy Davis. I actually want to share something with you, Kristy. So I saw this, and I know you were featured on the cover of Computer World. So can you take me back to 1997 and tell me the story of like how you used or like created an AI application in 1997 when people hadn't even heard about the word?
all I can see is my big hair. That's how you know it's 1997. Uh, it was a great time. The internet was really kind of becoming a thing, right? And I worked at Allied Signal, and we had a very forward-thinking CIO at the time. And I'll never forget, he came knocking on my door. Well, he didn't come knocking on my door. He left a note on my whiteboard and it said, "Come see me." And I thought I was going to get fired because when he first came in, he was going to change some technologies, and I was kind of busting him a little bit about it. And anyway, I went to go see him and he said, "I want you to head up my internet division." And I go, "I don't know anything about the internet." He goes, "Nobody does." He said, "But I like your spunk." So that's how I actually started with that. But Allied Signal, we were in the automotive division, and they were, we hosted or we sponsored the Winston Cup because we made a lot of like spark plugs, all of that type of stuff. And so we wanted to create something that was pretty unique and forward thinking. And we wanted to appeal to that racing fan and that whole group, but we also wanted to attract new customers and new interest. So we were looking at things that we could do. We had a guy that sat in the basement. We called him the Answer Man, and he would basically help people find hard to find parts that for old vehicles and all of those things. So we also found an AI, an artificial intelligence, real client server software program at the time that helped you diagnose what was wrong with your car. And we found a way to bring that to the internet and make it interactive. We gave it a character name called the Answer Man, and created a pit crew guy and girl to kind of answer questions about what might be wrong with your car. So it was pretty advanced. It was interesting how we got it up on the web at the time. And I actually tied that to a lot of our partners, resellers, and mechanics. that used our parts. And so when you went through the engine, we tied it to coupons, and you could do a printout and take it to your mechanic and say, hey, this is what I think is wrong, so that you could kind of have some confidence in all of that. So it was very interesting. It was very forward thinking. And unlike today, you didn't have a lot of the protocols that exist today for the internet. So getting that up in a world in that time was quite a feat.
You were quite ahead of your time, I would say. Like you added intelligence to internet when it wasn't even a thing, right? You built like more like
Yep.
an agentic app back then to what I would call uh, is like an agentic sort of similarity system right now.
It was
Awesome.
fun.
I can totally imagine. So I think that brings me to a topic that I really want to learn about, Christy. And this is specifically for me and the general audience, right? A lot of the buzzwords today are around GenAI and agentic AI and co-pilots and things like that. But you've seen it from 1997 or even before to now. It's been 30 years. So, if you don't mind, could you please break it down or walk us through how it evolved? How each technology stack that was built kind of like created a new layer of complexity or, like a boon for the industry, and like give us a background to how we came about today, Gen AI right now.
It's funny because when you say 30 years, I'm like, wow. But when the internet came out, it didn't have a lot of those fundamental building blocks that we sort of take for granted today. If you worked in a place that had a T3 line to get to the internet, it was a big deal. Today, everything is wireless and connected, and those protocols have advanced through building blocks and progression of time. But what I think that is always the thing that I try to stress in technology, even from back then, right? When you look at the internet coming online, it was like this, oh, what can we do with this thing? And and we followed all the old rules, right? We search engines like Google didn't exist at first, right? They were kind of like the yellow pages, and you brought it up online, and then it just become overwhelming to you, right? So that spurred new innovation. And each piece of this spurred another thing. But what I teach now, and I've done a lot of speaking engagements about AI and sort of looking at the internet and some of the parallels. When I look at truly disruptive moments of innovation, they they become tangible moments. And what I mean by that is the internet was sort of around for 50 years, right? Or 30 years in academia and all of that. But its tangible moment happened when this PC hit your desktop and you could take it home. And we got something called AOL, where you could get cheap access to the internet. And that
Mhm.
created an entire surge from there. And, we when we first start with anything, it's hard to look at those implications. And one of my favorite quotes is from Ford. If I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? And it's not because people didn't wouldn't want something better. The real truth is they wanted to go further, right? And they wanted to get there faster. That was really fundamentally, and all they could envision in their mind was horses. And and so same thing happens. The internet comes along and we say, oh, all right, well, how do we use this thing? And how do we put up these websites? And we went from this like, hey, this is like put your business card into a yellow page and stick it up online and let's call it a day, to evolving to what it is today. And when I look at this in the lens of Gen AI or AI has been around for 50 years as well, right? Um, but it wasn't tangible. It was this thing, like even in cybersecurity, right? Everybody talked about, oh, it's got ML and AI and all of this stuff, but it was this like sort of nebulous thing. You couldn't touch it or feel it. People said what it was, you thought it was sort of magic. And then here comes this absolute tangible moment in ChatGPT, and the masses, and again, this is the important piece, right? It's gotta be available to the masses for it to be pivotal. Um, People could touch and feel and experience AI. And it changed in an instant the progression of what it could be. But here's the difference between the internet and AI. The internet didn't have the internet. It didn't have accelerated compute. Today, AI has accelerated compute. It has all the building blocks. It has all of the history for protocols, etc., all of the things and the hurdles that we had to overcome to get to where we're going. And, you know, about 3 years ago, I started speaking about this to audiences, and a lot of resistance had come up, right, around this. "Oh, yeah, no, we're gonna go into the chasm, the Gartner hype cycle." And the one thing I like to remind people is that only regular people have this hype cycle. Researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, they are working through all of these things because they see something over here that they want to get to and they push that fabric. And I say suddenly, all of a sudden feels very sudden, but it's been in the works. What's interesting about the internet, back then we had time to catch up. Right now, this is running at the speed of light. Very similarly, it's certainly in a hype, right? Agentic this, agentic that. And it's really a fundamental name for what we always call a lot of the services that exist, but there's a nuance. And the nuance and the game changer really is that the user interface has forever changed to talking, natural language,
Mhm.
because it can understand generative AI can understand intent and context in a way that none of these other technologies. So we're gonna go into another paradigm shift. What I see right now is we're still trying to put it in the framework that we've always understood. And so when I look at enterprises, and I said this when I was speaking a lot, the first thing is always operational effectiveness, right? And I call that the race to the bottom. But just like back in the internet days, we have to really look at one word and one word only, and its implications. Blockbuster missed the implications, right? Because it couldn't imagine what these things could do. And it's disruptive in its own nature always because most of these companies can't pivot like that. You're trying to build and maintain your revenue. You've got to service your customers. So how do you make this actual pivot? And what I tell a lot of my customers today is look at the implications. Look at your business model today and how you go to market and put it under the lens of not how do you hang on to it, but how do you disrupt it now? Even if we can't get to where it's disrupted right this minute, so that you're not disrupted by somebody else. And that's a tough thing for some people to do.
What do most people get wrong about Gen AI today?
A lot, right? I think a lot of people do one of two things. They underestimate it or they overestimate it. And the people who underestimate it tend to kind of take this wait and see approach. And I would say, the first thing, even when you overestimate it, the first thing is you need a strategy, right? I think a lot of people are trying to apply AI to apply AI and say they're doing it without a lot of strategy behind it and what we just talked about. And I think for them, they're going to build a lot of stuff in a very haphazard way. The other
Mhm.
thing I think I see a lot of is, and I spoke at a conference with CIOs, and my big thing is you can't be a no person about this, right? You can't be the resistor. You have to really look at this in a very collaborative way with the business units. But what's going wrong is we're not building in that change piece, the fear factor, the things that prevent people from wanting to adopt it or are afraid to adopt it, and then you've got the overutilization. So I think there's a lot here, but my big thing is you've got to build a strategy with a real outcome and then look to figure out the right technology to apply to it. And I think that's decades long, but it happens more when you've got this pressure to say that you're doing AI.
If I were to use specifically Gen AI for something, what can I use it for versus there are things that it will not be proven as like a better solution in some of those aspects. What are the limitations and what are the
Sure.
benefits?
Yeah, it's not a end all be all, right? It has certain use cases, and it certainly is an interactive GUI. And I think, honestly, that's the biggest thing not to miss, that people will want to interact with this thing in that way. It's not going to solve all your problems, but what I would say is there are a lot of things that it has now enabled. Um, you look at knowledge graphs, right? That was also a mystery prior. But because knowledge graphs are so good at feeding data over to an LLM and helping you do smarter search, getting to answers better, and being able to be used in that environment, it's spurring up other technologies around it that will let that user interface of intent and content help you do more things, right? So anybody who's in prof services today, you have to look at it through the lens of what it can do and these implications. Anything around marketing, any of these things that you can explain what you want and get something back. But what's more interesting is not to think that that's gonna be the way it is, and that's what this is it, that's all you need is an LLM. It's not, right? But what I would say is, what it does is it spurs your imagination, and it allows you to create workflows and tie things together in ways that you couldn't before. And when you look at generative AI in terms of coding, and being able to explain what you want and create a program today in a way that you wouldn't. Now, it's still buggy, but guess what? It does a really good job. It's a good MVP. It's a good starting point. And so, what I would say is, even though it's not great at this, look at it from the ability to capture intent and context and feed something back that's very intelligent, and that you can surround it with knowledge that's very specific to your particular company, business, person, and have it do certain things, and then you can surround it with other things. Like, I'll give you an example. I'm consulting with a company, and they have an intelligence platform, and they're scraping data. And, you have to look at the implications of this, but there's a SQL query behind that. So today, to get that out of the SQL query, or build a graph or build all of those things is gonna take some time, but that doesn't mean I can't change my front end. I can't create, an LLM interface with my stuff that I trained and ask questions about what you're trying to query on, and there's nothing that prevents me from turning that into a query for the customer, right? And again, it's these building blocks that when you do it thoughtfully and you don't lock yourself in, you can start to use the technology in smart ways without making it or trying to do more than it should.
If you were to give advice to people who are just getting started and they're trying to explore AI and they're looking at all of these like buzzwords and various startups that are coming up with agentic AI and co-pilots and a lot of confusion around it, and also understanding the deep technology behind it, right? What advice would you give to someone who's getting started in terms of, hey, this is the path, these are some of the things that you should definitely know. And like if you follow this particular playbook, you would be better off in learning more or using or applying AI for something that you essentially would be beneficial or like successful with.
I would say really understand what an LLM is, right? I think a lot of people just start interacting, but if it depends on your career path. And I'm gonna back up because this is really important. Um, know yourself first. Know what you're innately good at and then pick a path for AI or any technology for that matter, because there's so many places that you can get involved within this whole process. And it's going to get easier, not harder. And a lot of stuff is going to be done for you. So know yourself first. What are you innately good at? Because whatever you're innately good at, and you can practice and bring those skills in, then you're going to be better at it. And when I look at AI today, I would ask you, where do you want to go with this? Right? What is it that you, given your skills, where do you want to go with all of that? Because programming is going to be easy, right? You're going to be able to build applications. But is there a certain passion you have? Is there some place that you really, you just shine? If I would say to you, be really honest with yourself about that. There are people who love to code and that's what they want to do, and they want to be in the weeds. When you're going to be in the weeds, then you need to get to the fundamental basics of this stuff. If you're somebody who's like, hey, I really want to learn this thing to be able to create some new capabilities for myself, or I want to um, do X or Y or Z, that's going to change the flavor of what I say, right? What I would say though is understand, and I'll go back to the same word, there are going to be implications on what this means for work, for what this means for how you interact. It has implications all over the place. I personally believe that it's going to give us the ability, unlike regular computers did, to get back to things that we really love to do,
Mhm.
right? We were supposed to be unburdened. Technology was supposed to give us productivity and give us free time. It didn't. It made it harder, right? More connected. But when AI can do some of those low level things for you, or you can use it to create a new program, or you can use it to interact with or help people in different ways, I'd ask you first, figure out what parts of AI will really interest you. Is it the application of it and what you can build, or is it building the application? And those two things will lead to a different answer.
Let's say there's a 20-year-old out there looking to get in and break into tech and is now getting aware of Gen AI and specifically Gen AI layer because that's
Yeah,
the hype these
sure.
days, right? Where would that person get started? What are some good resources for them to look into?
YouTube is brilliant, right? There's everything that you can do there, but I would start with a primer, right? Like, what is this thing called Gen AI? And then look for the interesting things that people are doing with Gen AI already. And then from there, start to discover and learn up. As you saw, I work with Tulane on their technology for, you know, advanced degree technology, and it's very hard for a university to keep up with the changes, right, in their curriculum. So I still advocate going to school and getting some other fundamental building blocks done, but I would really kind of look for things that you can go to and use as a mentor, and follow somebody, right, that you say, oh, I connect with this person, and then learn those basics and fundamentals. Today, GitHub, all of these things let you practice with this stuff like that, right? So you can do a lot more hands-on that way. But I'm one of those people that says start with a question and then go find the answer to that question, and don't stop with that question, right? Like, go to that next layer. Well, when you see a word that you don't understand or a concept you don't understand, go to that next layer down. Because what happens is when you go to the bottom, all of a sudden you can see exactly what things you can do. Now, if you're a person who just likes to code and just likes to do all that, well, then I would say learn the fundamentals and building blocks of coding, of prompting, and of what the basics of an LLM are, and ML, and all of that, so that you understand those fundamental building blocks, so you can actually get deeper into the technologies and the people that are building those technologies out.
So you're saying the deeper you go with every layer, you'll find out some interesting facts that'll keep you going. And in order for you to actually apply AI, you have to get deeply rooted in the technology stack.
you don't you can start very simple is what I guess I'm saying, right? It just depends on where you want to go. Like if you want to be a real, I want to be the person who creates a new protocol or be on the team that's got a new protocol for AI, or I want to be the person who figures out how to a new way to do X or Y or Z, or I've got new algorithms. That's a whole different path, right? Than somebody who ever wanted to just be a programmer and be a business analyst or be one of those people that created uh, outputs for this and put some software together. And there's another paradigm shift coming, right? So SaaS became the thing, right? So everybody became these product managers and all of these things. And SaaS's boom really took off from like 2016 forward, and it progressed. Well, AI is probably going to disrupt a lot of that. Um, and the way I like to frame that is it creates SaaS creates pocketed data that's not very usable.
Yes.
Right. And so then everybody was like trying to scramble, but now we have data lakes and we have unstructured data. And I tell people all the time when I speak that generative AI did for unstructured data something magnificent, right? It all of a sudden became profoundly usable. You don't have to switch it around. You can create classifications, you can create all kinds of stuff with this. But the biggest problem SaaS created was it was these pockets of data that weren't shared and work streams that weren't shared and all of these things. AI, agentic AI, headless flows, data in a data lake with unstructured data or however you frame that, that's usable, that can be grabbed in any format at any time changes the paradigm of SaaS, right? And I feel like SaaS is going to go away, not in a minute, but it's going to transform. And there's a lot of SaaS platforms that aren't going to make it through that transition, right? Because they're not going to be able to move fast enough. And people who do these pure play agentic types of things will probably take that. So I would say to you, if you're starting out, like don't look at the world as it is, look at the world as where it's taking you. But really get right. I took something called Strengths Finder 2.0 a long time ago. And it's part of those whole like, what are you good at? But what I really liked about this one is it gave you your top 5 strengths, but you can do a deeper one. And it not only tells you what you're good at, right? It tells you how you can apply those things. And one of the things that I learned about myself is that I'm a strategist. I'm a futurist, but I'm an activator. I like to get it going. But it tells you the kinds of people you should partner with. It tells you the things that will satisfy you, right? And so know yourself first and then dive into this because the opportunity is going to be endless in this thing.
I want to understand, Christy, from your point of view, because you're also like at the intersection of security and AI, and you worked at the channel company as well. You've evolved many businesses, and you're consulting a lot of businesses right now as well. So, what is it, or what's the hype for of like GenAI around cybersecurity right now, and how is everyone like just running crazy about it? And what do you think is happening right now in that market?
Well, first of all, right, cyber criminals are entrepreneurs. And so they find a new tool and they use that tool to exploit all of us, right? So, from my perspective, cybersecurity is going to take a bigger and bigger stage in all of this. Um, the hype is how do we do this, right? So everybody, again, this is all like, let's scramble, let's put something in, let's add this to the workflow, and everybody wants to be the first one, and it's kind of like nothing but a dumb paperweight to start with. Like if you remember, even when Gen AI hit that first year, right? Everybody built in like a summary tool in every SaaS platform. Well, I think the same thing is happening in cybersecurity. But what I really like about Gen AI in cybersecurity, and it's going to be more and more thoughtfully done, is you got to fight cyber criminals with the same tools that they use, right? And do them in smart ways. And I feel like one, the attack vectors are increasing. Deep
Mm-hmm.
fakes, you know, plagiarism, all of this stuff, the ability to create phishing attacks are just got 20 times better, right? So I think that one, we're going to have to employ the same tactics and we're going to use Gen AI. And where I think it can really add value, obviously, is to people in a SOC, and really implementing all of that layer together. And I know you're doing some things around that right now, which I think is important because it's fragmented. Alerts come up, it's overwhelming. How do we get better at this? But I also think that when it's thoughtfully applied, like you're looking to do, you have an opportunity to change the game and be smarter. And I feel like there's so much opportunity in cybersecurity right now, for people who are going to need the help. This is one area that I think end customers, I don't care if you've got a huge, um, company, having enough cybersecurity professionals and people to manage this is not easy, right? And so this economies of scale, and I think some of this Gen AI capabilities, looking at this from a workflow, but I also think there's smart ways to bring in knowledge graphs and other types of things where you're able to take these signals and find anomalies in a very different way in real time, even if it's one alert, or two. So it's going to be an interesting shift. I think it's overall going to be helpful in reducing some of the burden. I think that it's going to require us to look at security through a whole new lens. And if I may, when I was building out the MSSP, we were a managed services provider. We were building a full stack cybersecurity practice. And like I said in the beginning, it was almost impossible to get anybody to pay attention to cybersecurity because it was still not hadn't proliferated enough. And then you get a few big things and then all of a sudden everybody took interest. But then we got inundated and we just started building stacks or whatever, and you don't know what holes you have, or you don't. And I think it's time to take a new fresh look because everybody coming out with a new tool or a new cybersecurity this or a new way to do it, it's all confusing, right? It was, oh, you know, don't rely on one stack. Now, oh, well, if you don't have one stack, you have all these gaps, right? So what's the truth? And the truth is to really get rid of all of what you know and almost take a fresh perspective and say,
Committed.
okay, what are we really looking at here
Yeah.
before we just
Yeah.
apply another tool or another thing? And then how do we use Gen AI to streamline some of the things that we've been doing that are
Yeah.
cumbersome?
Yeah. So one last question, Christy, I have for you. Like, just from your point of view, where are we headed from here? Like, if you can plot or help our audience understand the next 5 to 10 years, like, what do you think we should be? You would be seeing.
This is a disruptive innovation, period. And we're just at the tip of the iceberg, right? And I'm not an alarmist, right? Because automation always disrupts labor, always. So this is why I keep bringing the word implications up. But I've said this all along. I'll give you an analogy, an example. I actually go and get my hair blown out every week. It's weird, but I do because I hate doing it. And I had somebody new who asked me, what I did, and I talked about doing AI, and she said to me, "Well, thank God AI is not going to take my job." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, you might be surprised." And I said, there's lots of reasons somebody comes to get their hair blown out, right? Um, some people might have an event, or some people like me just might not want to do it. But there's other pieces of what you do that are not so convenient for me, right? I have to come when you're open. The same person is not always available. It doesn't always come out the same, right? So there's lots of things within everybody's job or the services or solutions or the product or the business that you provide that don't fit 100% of that bill. And so when you look at something like AI and generative in particular, where it can take on a human like element, I said, well, I'll tell you what, if I owned this blow dry bar, this is what I would start doing today. I would create a hybrid model, right? Because there are going to be robotic capabilities. There are already created hands that can move every finger in the right way. And then I have a Gen AI program that can interact with me and can talk to me. But not only that, it remembers the hairstyle and the do and the way it was done. And it can repeat that process over and over and over again. Like I can select from a screen and say, I liked this one the best. I didn't like that one. Right. And I talk about a hybrid model and I would franchise this, right? Like I would start looking at what that looked like and then I would create a membership and I would have the ability to come in anytime of any day with combined with that human experience. And that human experience is something I might crave. And this is where I talk about this a lot. I think that's going to happen more and more. So when I look at the evolution, I think there's gonna be this whole screen capability, and it's gonna open the door for us to have more texture in our life. Maybe we'll have, like, poetry, circles and experiences in those ways, but I've often said it's gonna be disruptive, it is going to impact labor, we're gonna have to be really smart about where we go. I've I think we're gonna get to a place truly that we're gonna have to probably tax AI agents and robots like people, right? For the output of work or some monetary measure in order to keep the coffers full on the other end. But,
Girl, wait.
it's gonna be very interesting. I'm never afraid because it's gonna happen anyway. So my advice to everybody is understand that the internet happened and it disrupted a lot of businesses and it automated a lot of things away, but it created new opportunities. This is no different. And
Mhm.
so enjoy the ride because it's going to ride you either way.
Kristy, thank you. This was such a thoughtful, grounded, and inspiring look at where we have been and where we're going with AI. To everyone watching, whether you're new to AI or navigating how to use it better, remember it's not about knowing everything, it's about willing to explore. If you like that, if that was your base, please definitely subscribe, share, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.